It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. This has been a hard moment for many Jewish people. Anti-Semitism has been on the rise, and Americans' views of Israel are now mostly negative. Those are big changes, and they're translating into political shifts. We don't yet know how a majority of liberal Jewish residents voted during the Democratic Senate primary, but we do know that a lot of older Jews are unsure of how to vote now that Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is the Democratic nominee. Do they support him, or do they vote for Republican Mike Rogers? This question carries weight beyond the election itself. It represents larger quandaries about what it means to be Jewish, about what anti-Semitism actually is, and about whether one can feel warmth toward Israel while being critical of its government. Andy Levin organized for unions and served as president of his synagogue before running for office. His uncle Carl served 36 years in the U.S. Senate, and his father, Sander, served 36 in the House. Andy won his father's seat in 2018 and held it for 4 years. Then, redistricting put him in a primary against Haley Stevens. A super PAC tied to AIPAC spent more than $4 million to beat him, and it worked. He's here now to discuss that time and how some Jewish Metro Detroiters are navigating this political moment. Andy, welcome to the Metro.
Hey, Robyn, it's so good to see you. Good to be here.
You're very much in favor of Dr. Abdul El-Sayed for Senate. You canvassed for him leading up to the primary election. Why?
Well, Abdul is what we need at this time. I mean, Americans, not just Democratic, capital D, Democratic Party voters, but Republicans, independents. I feel like the crisis of income and wealth inequality has gotten so bad in this country. It's not even about the American dream anymore, Robyn. Like, can I make my rent or my mortgage payment or my car payment? You know, can I afford health care? More and more people don't even have health care after the subsidies were axed by the Republicans. And, you know, if I have a kid, can they afford to get married, buy a house, have kids? This is like a disaster these few super rich people are getting richer and richer. And meanwhile, money is flooding into politics, and corporations and the super rich are just dominating everything. And I feel like voters are just like done with this. They're done with the Republican Party. They're the Democratic Party. You know, they look at my party. I mean, I'm a lifelong Democrat, a partisan Democrat, super for my party, right? But they look at the Democratic Party and they're like, well, you're just as bought and paid for as, you know, another party, any other party, the Republicans or whatever. And what do you even stand for? And then here comes Abdul saying money out of politics, money in your pocket, right? Medicare for all. He's running very simply and strongly on, this is a guy that people look at him and they say, you know what? For one thing, I don't think people are going to mess with him. And for another thing, I think he's really going to do what he says. And he's about really changing my life so I can breathe, so I don't have to live paycheck to paycheck. So isn't it funny, because your intro was all about I'm Jewish and the Jewish community, and we'll talk about that. But my being for Abdul is because I think the electorate is like enough talking points, enough polls, enough consultants. Let me have somebody who shows some courage, speaks truth to power, and seems authentic. And that's Abdul. And by the way, somebody like Will Lawrence, a very progressive young person who won the Democratic primary for the 7th Congressional District, that's Senator Slotkin's old home district. So it's a thing that's much broader than just Abdul in this Senate race or even our state.
So what you're saying is you are sensing that the political winds are changing and that there are a lot of people who have an appetite for Dr. El-Sayed's message about affordability, about getting money out of politics. However, one of the reasons we wanted to speak to you is because there are Jewish residents here who can't reconcile that message with Dr. El-Sayed's messages about AIPAC and Israel. And this has me wondering, and I want to get deeper into that, but this has me wondering, have you gotten flack from the Jewish community in Metro Detroit for supporting El-Sayed?
Well, I have to say there are every day I talk to people who are worried, but you know what, Robyn? Most of the people who talk to me and call me and email me and text me every dang day, they are for Abdul, but their friends aren't, or the people at work, or the people in their synagogue, or they're worried about that. And they're thinking, like, our democracy is at stake. We have to get the Jewish community to vote for Abdul. And, in my little Jewish world, my synagogue, Congregation Techia in Ferndale, and Detroit Jews for Justice, which I helped found. And, it's a flourishing Jewish world.
But you're talking about a Jewish world, if I may, that's very, very progressive.
Yes. But you know what? If you go to our campuses, whether it's Northern Michigan or Central or Michigan State, U of M, wherever, Wayne State right here, I mean, so many young Jewish people are inspired by Abdul, and they want the change. So I remember a time when in 2008, when young Jewish people were so inspired by Barack Obama, but oh my God, were we going to elect our first black president? And there was like whole campaigns to get Bubby and Zadie, their grandparents, to be like, no, you're voting for the black guy. This is, do it. He is great. He will be a great president. And look, let's just put it out there, since we're talking about the Jewish community. Abdul is Muslim. Abdul is Arab American. And for a lot of more conservative Jews or more right-wing on Israel Jews, that's like the other team. That's the other side. And they are hesitant to vote for an Arab American or a Muslim, or they think that, and few would admit it, but they view that as something that is difficult for them to do in practice. And that's true, obviously, the broader public, too. There's a lot of racism and xenophobia in America. So,
are those the voters who cannot be convinced?
Maybe they are. And there are many people who are, very concerned about Israel. So it's isn't it a complex basket of issues? Like there's anti-Semitism, there's Israel, Palestine, there's all these things all mixed together.
I mean, you talk about younger Jews being supportive of Abdul El-Sayed. I want to think about some of the older liberal Jews in Metro Detroit. The Metro has spoken to a number of them, and they've said they're torn. They don't want to support Republican Mike Rogers, but they don't like some things about El-Sayed, including his constant attacks on AIPAC. Several said, hey, we're no fans of AIPAC, but we don't see it as different from other super PACs. What's your answer to that?
Well, AIPAC, I don't know about this cycle, but I believe in 2022 and maybe 2024, they were the biggest outside spender in Democratic primaries. And here's the thing that's so problematic about that, Robyn. Most of the money that they're pouring in there comes from Republican centimillionaires, is that a word, like hundreds of millions, and billionaires who are putting money in to Democratic primaries. And that's that's not just a problem for Democrats, that's a whole problem for democracy. Our system is supposed to be like, okay, well, each party, whether it's in a primary or a convention, right, they pick their standard bearers to go up against the other party in the fall. Well, if Republicans are going to spend huge amounts of money to pick the Democratic nominee, it's not just AIPAC. They're leading like a terrible way. They're blazing a trail that, like, ExxonMobil or Big Pharma or other basically mostly Republican interest groups would be, gee, thanks, AIPAC. That's a really brilliant idea. We'll pick the nominee of both parties to go, and then we'll be fine, whoever wins in the fall. So it's toxic for our democracy, what they're doing.
So what you're saying is that AIPAC essentially is uplifting Democratic candidates that actually have Republican interests in mind.
Well, what I'm saying is that AIPAC used to be all about bipartisanship. And then after January 6th happened, AIPAC said, we're so single issue focused that we're going to back something like 147 Republicans who voted to deny the legitimacy of their fellow Americans' votes, millions of their fellow Americans in Arizona and Pennsylvania. We're going to back them anyway. No matter what happens, we're going to. And the thing is, Robyn, when they pour all this money into these campaigns, it's not even honest.
Who is AIPAC doing the bidding for then, in your eyes?
I'm not just themselves. I don't know. But the point is that
just themselves or Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli government.
Okay, so this is a very important distinction. AIPAC is an American organization of American people. It comes out of the Jewish community, but it's not only even Jews, right? That wants an Israel right or wrong, Israeli government right or wrong. We must support the Israeli government, seemingly no matter what it does. That's what we disagree with. And it's mostly American Republicans' money who are giving they're giving millions and millions of dollars to this. And that's just wrong. So it's, some people call it the Israel lobby, but it's an American lobby about American policy towards Israel. And the question, Robyn, is, do we get to disagree about this? And within the Jewish community, do we get to say, oh my God, I love all my Jewish friends in Israel, my Israeli friends, and I care so much about their security and safety, but I'm going to stand up and criticize the Israeli government's horrifying policies just as much as I do the Egyptian government or the U.S. government now.
But that is still a very controversial thing to do within the Jewish community, is it not?
Well, less and less so. I mean, because, look, and this is a big difference between 2022 and today. What the Netanyahu regime has done in response to the horrifying events of October 7th. First of all, many in Israel are so mad still at the Netanyahu government for their failings that allowed this terrible border raid to happen. But anyway, Hamas and other terrorist organizations, flooded across the border, committing war crimes, right? Just doing horrible things, killing people, kidnapping people, raping people, taking people off from a music festival, and just horrible, right? Okay. And then Israel had the world's sympathy at that moment. And it could have taken a much different path, but it took not just a military path, but a path that has no apparent military strategy to it. The idea that you're going to eliminate Hamas. I mean, we Americans should know about this. Whether it's Vietnam or everything since then, there's no military solution, essentially, Robyn, is what I'm saying to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Meaning you can't eliminate an ideology.
You can't eliminate an ideology. You can't eliminate, even a guerrilla group like that completely. And Israel's response was so horrifying, killing 72,000 or more people, women and children killed at a clip not seen in so long, dropping humongous bombs on civilians. When the U.S. military said, we are the source of those bombs are bombs made in the United States. We didn't drop those bombs in Iraq. We didn't drop those bombs when we were fighting ISIS. We don't drop those bombs on civilian areas. And,
But you're getting, if I may, you're getting to something that I do want to think more deeply about, and that is the fact that for some Jewish people, the idea of keeping Israel strong and safe is very much tied to their identity and tied to the idea of the Jewish faith and Jewish people staying strong and safe. But before we get there, I want to ask you something about AIPAC. It organized really hard against you. It spent over $4 million on Haley Stevens' campaign when you ran against her. That's a big reason you lost that race. Why did you become a target for them?
Well, I think I became a target for AIPAC because they were particularly threatened. I mean, most of their targets besides me, or until then or whatever, and even more recently, were like women of color, people of color, the Squad Plus, all that kind of stuff. But here I was Sandy Levin's son, Carl Levin's nephew, right? I was the president of my synagogue until I got elected. I figured I better resign, as a member of Congress. I can't do those kind of things. And I was sort of the loudest Jewish voice in the House for an idea about how to keep the people in Israel safe, actually. How to keep the Jewish people in Israel safe, namely, that there's no way to have a safe and secure future for my people in the Holy Land unless and until we fully realize the political and human rights of the Palestinian people. I'm sorry, Robyn. I just think that's flat out true. And AIPAC, despite whatever rhetoric, has been against a two-state solution. They've supported the Netanyahu government. Benjamin Netanyahu has never been for a two-state solution for 1 minute in his life. And he said horrible things about Yitzhak Rabin before he was murdered because he was pursuing, peace with the Palestinians and a two-state solution. And so, I came to this back in the day. We're still mourning Ish Ahmed, right? Who was a DJ on this station and meant so much to our community. I worked with Ish and others to organize an interfaith delegation to Israel and Palestine in 1990. And Mary Freeman, now my wife, by then girlfriend, and I went with a bunch of people. The Episcopal Bishop of Michigan was the head of our delegation. We went all over Israel, the West Bank, and in those days, there was no Hamas yet. You go all around Gaza. We met with political leaders in all these places. And Robyn, I came home and I wrote an article in the Jewish News, which you can still find, that said, oh my gosh, 23 years of occupation, 1967 to 1990. That 23 years, whatever it was. That is too much. This is bad for Israel. It's bad for the Jewish people. It's bad for our soul. I saw the occupation. It was degrading. It's not good. We need to end this, and with our Palestinian cousins, we can work together to create peace. And one of the things, to bring it back to Abdul, that I like about his position is he says it's not up to Americans to decide how that happens. He is committed, Robyn, to the Israeli people and the Palestinian people deciding together how they will live together in peace, share the land. And that's my position, since 1990. So, and AIPAC couldn't stand that.
So you're saying that seeing what was happening in Israel and Palestine with your own eyes, coming back, writing about it, you feel that really put the target on your back when it came to AIPAC.
I still remember those days. I was a graduate student at University of Michigan, and older Jews or leaders, like the head of Hillel on the Michigan campus, was like, oh, Andy, that's like a radical position, even though it was just for a two-state solution, And then later, when I was in Congress, I actually wrote a bill called the Two-State Solution Act that, by today's terms, it's kind of milquetoast, but in 2020 or whenever, our 2021, when I wrote it, it basically said, okay, the U.S. has to do everything we can to support democracy in Palestine, to support democratic institutions, to support Israel working with Palestinians, no annexation, work together to figure out a solution. And AIPAC was super hostile to this bill, and they felt they had to take me down.
As briefly as you can, Andy, was that the turning point moment for you going to Israel and Palestine?
Well, the thing is, Robyn, I went back after I was in Congress. And to be honest, I was skeptical whether a two-state solution was still possible, 1990 to 2019, I think. And, I went with J Street, which is a pro-Israel, pro-Palestine, liberal, Jewish-based lobbying group in D.C. And they convinced me, we could still have land swaps of equal size and equal value from the 67 borders, a little bit of tweaking, and there could be a Palestinian state in Gaza, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem, and Israel, largely as it is now. And, I came back and I said, okay, I'm going to keep fighting for this. And AIPAC, oh my God, I didn't go on the AIPAC trip. I went on the J Street trip. Literally, they're so furious that you're not allowed to do that.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Andy Levin. He's a former congressman, part of a Michigan Jewish political dynasty, and he's been stumping for Dr. Abdul El-Sayed for Senate. We're talking about why and the tensions many older Jewish voters in Metro Detroit are navigating in this political moment. Look, Andy, some Jewish Metro Detroiters might say, hey, you lost your primary, you've been out of Congress 4 years, and you're now the reliable Jewish endorsement for a candidate who makes a lot of Jews nervous. They'd say, you're not speaking for the community. You're being used by a campaign that needs you. What's your answer?
My answer is that's ridiculous. I backed Will Lawrence in the 7th Congressional District. I backed Donovan McKinney in the 13th Congressional District against my former colleague because I thought, Donovan would be fantastic. I backed state Senate candidates. Yes, Abbas Alawiya, but also Justin Onwenu. And, and I backed a whole bunch. And they all won. I'm so happy, Robyn. Progressives won. But the thing is, I don't pretend to speak for the Jewish community, but why do I not just get to be myself, a part of the Jewish community? And I've got to challenge you on one thing, this older Jews, younger Jews, I know a lot of older Jews who are passionately for Abdul El-Sayed. And yet it's very hard to get that story out because people want it to be, I guess, right. One of the great things I love about WD in general in this show is you complexify things, but out there, in the broader press, they just want to simplify everything. Oh, there's some young Jews who are for Abdul, but really most Jews are not.
Hey, that's what this whole show is about,
exactly.
Is the nuance of these issues. But correct me if I'm wrong here. There are a lot of older Jewish liberal folks who don't like what's happening in Israel. They don't like the far right-wing government and the violence Palestinians have faced at its hands. But they also still love Israel, and they don't want the country to be shamed or stigmatized or hated by others. And I mentioned this briefly earlier. For some of these folks, for their entire lives, they've believed that the strength of Israel is tied to the strength of Jewish people everywhere. What do you say to them?
Well, that's so well said, Robyn. I mean, that's a good kind of summary of where a lot of people are at. I feel like what I want to say to them, or what I do every day, say to them is, look, we're Jews. We have to wrestle with God. That's literally what the Torah says. We have to come to terms with, and I'm going to use the word, Robyn, because I'm a human rights activist for 40 years. I fought for Tibetan human rights, Haitian human rights. I was in China during the Tiananmen massacre. I saw people killed in front of my own eyes in multiple countries. Israel committed a genocide in Gaza. We have to deal with that. That's a reality right now. I mean, since the so-called truce, 1,000 more people have died in Gaza. Every day on the West Bank, people's lands are being taken. People are being killed. People's olive trees are being burned. We have to deal with this as Jews who love Israel, who love Israel. Many of us have family there, right? And friends and, so forth, including me. So I just think that, that for one thing, there's been a much stronger history of struggle within the Jewish community about Zionism and anti-Zionism than is mostly normally discussed. For example, there are Orthodox Jews who consider it a sin to talk about, to have a Jewish state because when the Messiah comes back is when that they think their interpretation of the Torah is that we will have a Jewish homeland when the Messiah comes back, and the Messiah has not come back yet. There are other Jews who, I just finished reading this book by Molly Crabapple called our country is where we live, or where we live is our country, or something. But anyway, it was about the Bund, the Jewish Bund, which means union. And it was about this movement in Poland and Russia and Lithuania, all from like the early, from around 1900 till going up to the end of World War II, they were really anti-Zionists. And they saw the Zionists as like, hey, stand up and fight for democracy here in Bialystok, here in Warsaw, here in Petrograd, or all the different names that St. Petersburg had, so within the Jewish community, there's such a diversity of opinions. We should celebrate that. We have to fight against anti-Semitism everywhere on the ground where it is and fight for Jewish safety everywhere.
It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Andy Levin. He's a former congressman, part of a Michigan Jewish political dynasty, and he's been stumping for Dr. Abdul El-Sayed for Senate. We're talking about why and the tensions that some Jewish voters in Metro Detroit are navigating in this political moment. We'll be right back. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. My guest is Andy Levin. He spent 4 years representing Michigan's 9th District, the seat his father held for 36 years before him, until a super PAC tied to AIPAC spent millions to help Haley Stevens beat him in a 2022 primary. This month, he was out knocking doors for Abdul El-Sayed, the Democrat who just won the Senate primary, running against AIPAC's money. We're talking about what he says to Jewish voters here who aren't sure where to land in November. And when we think about some of those Jewish voters, Andy, some folks are concerned about the way that Dr. El-Sayed talks about the state of Israel specifically. Here's what he said to us last week after his primary victory.
You cannot tell me that while we cannot provide everybody clean drinking water, that it makes sense for us to send billions of dollars to a foreign government. And then finally, I believe in equal rights to peace, dignity, and self-determination. I just don't believe in ethnostates, and I don't think we should be backstopping them. So the notion that somehow the self-determination of Jewish Israeli people has to come at the cost of self-determination for Palestinian people, I just don't believe.
Dr. Abdul El-Sayed is saying a lot of things there. And I think some Jewish people will hear his words, particularly some older Jewish voters, and it'll scare them. Does it worry you at all to hear him say that he doesn't support a Jewish majority in Israel if it comes at the cost of sovereignty for Palestinians?
You know, Robyn, it doesn't worry me. I mean, there's a couple of things I want to say about this. First of all, Abdul, we talked this morning. I talk to him about these things all the time. Abdul understands that Judaism isn't just a religion. Jewish people are a people. We've got Yiddish and Hebrew. We've got languages. We've got literature. We've got food, whatever. We got a culture. And, we, like any people, deserve self-determination. And not only that, we deserve self-determination in the Holy Land. I mean, there's 7.5 million Jews who live there. They've been there for in large numbers for many, many years. And I think what he's so insistent on is Israel's there, fine, it's there, but we cannot get to a peaceful situation for Israel or for the Jewish people in Israel until we get to full human and political rights for the Palestinian people. And let's get about it. Let's get about it. That's got to be the focus. I think, when I was thinking over the little break about what you've been saying about Jewish people and what to do about it. And you know what my biggest thing is that I'm going to be working on in these next weeks is bringing Dr. Abdul El-Sayed together with Jewish people in small groups. We have several meetings set up. We're organizing more just so they can talk to him directly and hear from him directly, both about Israel and Palestine, but also about the whole thing about anti-Semitism and stuff. Because I think that has been people who look the AIPAC and those groups and the people who want to destroy him or want to make sure that he doesn't get elected. There's a lot of distortion going on. For example, the horrifying event at Temple Israel. After that guy went in there and thank God didn't kill anybody but himself, but he could have killed a lot of people, and it could have been just such a disaster. Anyway, it's traumatizing for the people, will be for years. What I want my Jewish brothers and sisters to do is go look at what Abdul actually said. He didn't justify that, period, ever, not even close, Robyn. The very first day he came out and said, this is horrible, it's completely unacceptable, and he expressed sympathy. The next day he came out with a video, or I think it was a video, where he said that stuff all again. And then he said, and let's look at the cause of this, not to justify it. In fact, he said it's completely unjustifiable. But this guy, this Lebanese American guy who had never gotten into any kind of trouble like anything before, a restaurant worker in Dearborn Heights or Dearborn, his brother and some siblings and nephews and nieces were just killed by Israeli bombs or something in their village in Lebanon. And the guy lost it and went and did something so horrifying and so unacceptable. But, any psychiatrist, Robyn, any psychologist, any social worker, any forensic person looks for causes, and so when he says hurt people, and people are like, oh, he's justifying that. Come on. That is not a Jewish value to say we can't look at causes. We can't look at why. We can't talk about how violence begets violence because we know it's true and it does.
So what you're saying is in the same conversation that we are talking about anti-Semitism, which we have done a lot on this program, we also need to be talking about rising Islamophobia in the Metro Detroit Jewish community. Is that right?
I mean, absolutely. Look, if Abdul is Jewish, who is Dr. Abdul El-Sayed? Son of immigrants, can we relate? Somebody who went to U of M, was so gifted. He was his class speaker. He was like his high school football captain. And I think he was the lacrosse captain or something at Michigan. Such an astounding student that he became a Rhodes Scholar, graduated from Columbia Medical School, co-wrote medical journal articles, about different diseases and stuff.
An accomplished person who you like a lot.
But if he was Jewish, we'd be pinching his cheek and saying, boy, chick, this guy is so amazing. We're so proud of him. Oh, but because he's Arab American, right? We cannot see him. We other him. And here's the thing, Robyn. You talk about my family a lot. My dad and uncle were these two Jewish brothers who grew up in Detroit, went to Central High. My dad was the president of the Central High School class of 1949. He's still alive, by the way. He's 94, going strong. But there have been Jewish members of Congress since 1845. I think that was the first time. There's been about 200 to 250. And at any given time now, there's 30, 35, 25 in the House, 10 in the Senate, something like that. Okay. There have been 4 Muslims who ever served in the U.S. House of Representatives. Keith Ellison, now the Attorney General of Minnesota, and Andre Carson. He's not in the House anymore, but Andre Carson, and then Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, who were elected with me in 2018. There has never been a Muslim in the U.S. Senate. And the reason I say this is, Robyn, do we Jewish people, how much do we believe in this American project, in this American experiment? How grateful are we that we have voice in this democracy? And can we really be true to our values if we don't say, look, let this young, brilliant Muslim guy get elected? Will he say exactly what we want? Will he argue exactly like...
Andy, we're running out of time here, so I want to put this question to you.
Yeah.
You are describing a very challenging moment, a deep,
sure.
a deep delta within the Jewish community. How do you think the Jewish community should be working to resolve this?
Well, I'll tell you what. I think the vast majority of Jewish people will vote for Abdul El-Sayed on November 3rd because he absolutely reflects our values on issue after issue: civil rights, human rights, health care, taking care of poor people, taking care of immigrants. He agrees with us on all of it. And as people get to meet him more and talk to him more and realize he will fight against anti-Semitism and he will stand for the self-determination of the Jewish people in Israel, I think more and more people will vote for him. But that's gonna be our struggle from now till November 3rd, to get more people to get beyond stereotypes, get beyond superficial stuff, and get to know Abdul El-Sayed as a person and actually realize how proud they would be to help elect the first Muslim senator in the history of the United States.
Former Michigan Congressman Andy Levin, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, Robyn.
And we should note that the Metro has reached out to Mike Rogers' campaign for Senate multiple times. We're still waiting to hear back from him. The invitation is open, Mr. Rogers. It's the Metro on WDET. I'm Robyn Vincent. Up next, when $1 billion project lands on a neighborhood that spent decades being overlooked, can it actually leave the people who live there better off? That's the question we're asking after the completion and opening of the Gordie Howe Bridge. Stay with us.